I think you guys might be shocked to know how many people are genuinely afraid to say the words Candyman 5 times in front of a mirror. It's fascinating, and it just shows you how strong of a stronghold that the original Candyman have on today's media, nostalgia, and just the world as a whole. It's a small niche horror franchise that has a big wallop, and I'm giving my thoughts in reaction to the new film Candyman right after the jump. Hello, everyone. Terrence here with Hollywood Already Did. If you haven't already, go ahead, like, share, subscribe to the channel, ring that bell below. Anytime we have something, you will be among the first to know. Many delays, but we finally got the new Candyman film produced by Jordan Peele, directed by Nia DaCosta. I am going to say that name a lot because I want to make sure that no one is giving credit for how amazing this film is to Jordan Peele. Jordan, kudos for helping to write, helping to produce, and helping to fund and put this young lady in the place. But this is Nia DaCosta's film, and she knocks this bad boy out of the park. I am going to do my best to be as non-spoilery as I possibly can. Um, but there are some things that I may have to hint at here and there just to kind of get through this. The first thing that I want to say is people, I hate when films do this Candyman and Candyman, the same title but for two different films. So I want to say original Candyman, speaking when I'm talking about the first one. So the first question that I know people will ask is, do I need to have seen the original Candyman to enjoy this film? The answer is sort of complicated a little bit. I would say no, you don't need to watch it. They do enough explaining of what the history and lore is of two films. They sort of explain and give you hints of what happened in the original. Um, I do think it opens up things for me, and I feel like there are two different ways to watch this film, and that's what's interesting about this. There is an audience who has not seen the original Candyman and is going in blind and experiencing things and kind of not having a huge twist or huge explanation part or plot point of this movie being disturbed with him until the director, writer, and film wants you to. If you don't have that knowledge, you're kind of like, oh, cool. If you've seen the original and you're aware of and you pay attention to names and you pay attention to everything, you will be well aware of what's happening and kind of being on the fate or loop that this film sort of talks about within just the history of the world. That how everything is sort of on a loop and it always comes back full cycle. Two completely different ways to sort of view this film depending on if you've seen the original, which is why it's complicated whether or not you have to see the original to do this, because I think it might be interesting to see how many people enjoy the film not having that original film and then how many people do. I feel like this is a pitch perfect sequel to that. It's a follow up. There are definite direct ties to that. Helen, who was the major character in the first one, is a major shadow, if you will, for this one. I think what I enjoy about this is that the OG Candyman was very much taking a lore of a man who was murdered at the hands of white people and the torture that they put him through and had him come back to be this boogeyman. But it shows you that through the eyes of a white woman. Helen was very much blue-eyed white girl going through Cabrini Greens, kind of getting information, being a journalist, and sort of trying to figure out why things were the way they were. This film uses an African American as your lead, your focal point, and it changes sort of the viewpoint of this. You see things differently. Cabrini Greens has been completely gentrified around, which they make a lot of social and social poignant and on the nose jokes about gentrification that has occurred over Chicago and Cabrini Greens, and how Cabrini Greens is basically still there, but everything has been built up so pretty around it. Every town's sort of gone through this. LA is no different. We have Skid Row sort of surrounded by high rises. That's just sort of how the world works. The thing is with the loop is that they keep saying that the world has basically created these tenements, these homes, these low income homes, pushed African Americans out, put creatives in there, artists, whatnot in there, and then asked them to leave and sort of just make it sort of low end, but for the most part, keeping it away from people of color. It sort of becomes this vicious loop. What we get in this film, um, one of the issues that I've always used to have with Candyman as a whole, and I don't want to go too far into it because if I do, it sort of gives away the entire film. I always had an issue with Candyman being a boogeyman for everyone, considering that the people who caused him pain were of a certain ethnic background. He was killed by white people. They tortured him, and so the fact that he was killing people of color, black people, in Cabrini Green, just always sort of like, well, why is he a boogeyman for them? And sort of you get a little bit more seeding and playing with all of that, and sort of a proactive fix for that within the realm of the story. This movie definitely gets into some social topics that I think are very important, and it sort of ties it all together. The last 20 minutes of this film are everything is great in this movie, but the last 20 minutes just hit me in a different way. I feel like it would hit anybody who cares about this type of stuff, but as a black man, oh boy, man, it's brutal. But before any of all of that, it is a gorgeously shot film. One thing that really stands out is the shot style or the shot mechanisms. I feel like with the OG Candyman, you're limited by the time. When you show anything in a mirror, you kind of the way you had to shoot back then is that the mirror was one shot. You have to pull it away and show like a false mirror or a false door to sort of explain that. Here, because your technology is the way that it is, you can sort of show Candyman being in the mirror image and the mirror here and just have a ball with it. And Nia does. There are some brutal, just amazing deaths in this film, and the way that it's shot using mirrors or using compact mirrors, and you're seeing stuff happening in the shadows. One of the greatest, and I just you have to see it. It's one of the greatest shots I've ever seen in like film. There's a pullback of one of like sort of an old school like Clue mystery where you can sort of see in everybody's window. There's a pullback shot of that, and I won't go into what's happening, but there's a pullback shot of that you just have to keep your eyes focused on one square, one of the windows, just to see what's happening. It plays so well. It is stunning to watch. There's a slow descent that happens in this film, just like the first Candyman, where it's a slow build to madness. There's a slow build to madness here, but with a twist, and the twist is fantastic. This movie gets very much into legacy, history. You get into more of the lore of what Candyman or the Candyman ethos is, and how there may not be just one. There may have been a bunch of them over the history of time, but they all sort of come back to this one uniform thing, and they sort of become this beacon of pain and struggle that we being black people have had to endure for so long. And it's a powerful film. I did not think that I would enjoy this movie as much as I did. It is very, as I said earlier, it is a movie that you don't need to have seen the original, because I think it still stands on its own. But I think when you tie them together, it plays so much better as a pairing. That scene where it began and where it ended, ignoring those other two sequels, that they're not very good. This is the perfect 1A and 1B to each other, and it feels earned, it feels relevant, and it feels very poignant. And I can't say enough about how much I thoroughly enjoyed this movie, and I think everybody should check it out. No, it's hard. People are not going out to theaters. Things are closing. Things are masked. It's just weird out there. But if you can get your eyes on Candyman, and it's something that you want to see, I know that first film freaks people out, just the thought of Candyman, but I think there are a lot of people that if you get by that and you watch this, and yes, it's brutal, yes, it's violent, yes, it gets into the scares, there's some funny moments too. There's some humor where you're like, hey, yeah, I'm not going to say this in front of a mirror. Just because y'all told me to. I'm out. I'm out of this. There are those moments too. I think it all plays well together, but I think you need to watch this because there's a social story that is here that if I speak too much on it, it's going to give it away. But there's a point that I think anybody who is seen what the news has been doing over the last few years with black men and women being pulled over by the police, or the Black Lives Matter movement. I think if you've seen any of that and you've lived any of that, if you've just witnessed any of that, I think this is a film that will mean more to you than the fear of not seeing it. So on my scale of once is enough, play it again, Sam, or give me a time zone so I never have to think about this again. This is definitely a play it again, Sam. Also, side note, Marvel, you guys are some sneaky bastards. This is the third director that I think you've sort of maybe seen an earlier cut of a film with somebody who's working on the set like, yo, you might need to talk to them. It was Destin Daniel Cretton who was doing Just Mercy, and he got signed on to this. He got a sign on the Shang-Chi. It was Chloe Zhao, off of doing Nomadland, put her on Eternals, and now Nia DaCosta is doing the Marvels after this. So you're keeping your foot on the pulse. I like it, but you're some sneaky bastards. I feel like you got an ear to the ground that people pipeline may not have. But those are my thoughts. What did you guys think of Candyman? If you've seen it, go ahead and leave your thoughts and comments in the comments below. If you haven't already, go ahead and follow us on Twitter at HollywoodADI. You can hit us up on email at HollywoodAlreadyDidIt@gmail.com. We also have a podcast with the same name that's on Google Podcasts, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, anywhere that plays podcasts. We're there. We are currently doing a Marvel pair-up where we're talking about Marvel's What If show with non-MCU canon Marvel movies and sort of seeing the history of those Marvel films as they have gone along. We also are probably going to do, on our original, the OG Hollywood Already Did It show, we're going to probably be talking all about Candyman and get a little bit more under the hood of these two films and what makes it all tick. And that one will be much more spoilery if you want to hear my thoughts about that. But like always, I got my ticket. You got yours.